So, I've always been looking for other stuff to try, new stuff, and then I came across Datura, and I'd heard about it a couple of times before, and I remembered that my friend, we'll call him R, had been talking about some guy had grew it in his backyard and his dog had eaten one and stared at the wall barking for 5 hours straight. So I was like, hell, why not? If it got the dog fucked up, it could be fun. And R happened to just live a little ways up the street, around 5 minutes away. So I smoked a bowl and walked up there. I hopped his wall and there it was, right in front of me. There were no seed pods on it though, so I just grabbed a handful of leaves, being stoned and paranoid that his neighbours would see me, and hopped back over. I walked back and smoked a cigarette, wondering if this was the right thing, and if so, would the leaves even do anything? So I get home and right away into the kitchen and poured a couple of cups of water into a pan, and I threw in all the leaves, probably 8 or 10, and then I turned on the stove. I sat there and stirred for a while and watched the water evaporated. I added a little bit more water and waited, and it too evaporated quickly, and the leaves were beginning to fall apart, so I took them out and I poured a little bit of the greenish brown liquid into a measuring cup. It ended up being around 1/4 of a cup, so I made a quick cup of coffee and mixed the liquid in. I sat at my computer desk and downed the coffee. It really didn't taste like anything at all, just coffee. And then after finishing the cup, I got up and I went to watch TV for a while. And after around 10 minutes, I was wondering if it was even working. So I got up to go and get some water, and immediately my legs felt really weird. I was kind of off balance and a little bit lightheaded. So I smiled and decided that I had gotten the right thing. The thing right, and it was indeed working. So I went and sat back down on my couch and watched TV to wait for the full effects to come on. A few minutes later, I looked up from the TV and R, my friend, was walking down my hallway. He told me we had to go to the grocery store. I live around a 20 minutes walk from the store, so I decided, okay, let's go. So me and R started walking up the highway towards it, having long conversations the whole time about stuff that had happened in the past and why we were going to the store. He said he needed to cash his cheque from work so he could buy an 8th, which was weird because R had smoked weed once and had puked in the corner of my friend's backyard and then started crying about how he had let all kinds of people down. But I was too fucked up to notice, so I was like, okay, that's fine. I know a sick guy that sells some dank ass shit, so we made plans to call him right after we cashed his cheque. We got there and walked inside, and right as I got in there, I completely forgot why I came to the store, and R was gone. So I figured he had just left. So I walked around a little and saw another one of my friends. We'll call him D. I started talking to him about how I came up here with R and then he left, so I was just kind of hanging around. We had a little conversation and D told me to look at something. So I turned around and when I turned back, D was gone. And a lady was there with her 2 kids, just looking at me from a few feet away like, what the hell is this kid on? So I smiled and waved at her and went to a different aisle. And when I got to the next aisle, my friend, we'll call him N, came walking up. I had known... Oh, this is so funny. I had known N since we were like 3, and he was one of my really good friends. I saw him. I saw him and was like, oh shit dude, what are you doing here? And he replied saying that he was here to buy a new scuba suit. At this point, I was around an hour and a half into the trip, so it's pretty safe to say that I was indeed gone. So N needing to buy a new scuba suit seemed reasonable as hell. I told him we should both go scuba diving in the Rio Grande. I live in New Mexico and my house is about 2 minutes from that river, so we set off through the store to find the scuba gear. After probably around half an hour of just walking around and talking about how fat how fat R was, and how I had just jacked him off his goofballs, we decided to sit down. So we went to the nearest table, and I looked down to make sure there was nothing on the chair, and when I looked up, N was gone. So I decided he probably had gone back to school. So I got up, went wandering around for a little longer, when suddenly I had this feeling that I had half of some white widow sitting in my room. And extremely excited at the thought of this, I ran through the store and all the way home, somehow managing to navigate across a very busy highway and not get hit by a car. I got home and didn't remember why I had ran all the way there, so I sat and smoked a cigarette. Okay, sounds like a safe, kinda weird little trip, right? Wrong. This is where things get crazy. I don't remember anything, just little bits and pieces past that point. And the next thing I remember, my mum was coming home and yelling at me, asking why I had no clothes on. And I just mumbled some rubbish about how I had to take them off because it was warm and the air conditioner had been towed off by some cowboy in a red van. Yeah, she pretty much knew I was on something right then and there. So she asked what I had taken, and I told her it was this stuff from R's garden, and he had sold it to me for $10. She kind of freaked out and started asking me all these questions, but I just walked off, trying to find my cell phone, which was later found in the door of the refrigerator. She called over my neighbour, who was a few years older than me, and had past history of pretty heavy drug use, but quit to be a preacher. He told her he had no idea what I had taken, and after a few minutes of trying to figure it out by asking me and getting a bunch of shit about how I had bought stuff from R because it fucked his dog up. So I made 4 litres of tea out of it and went to the store to go scuba diving, and needless to say he got nothing and went back home. So the next thing I remember is my dad coming home and having a psychotic episode thinking he was the devil and trying to choke him and having him throw me to the ground and sit on me till I had calmed down. At this point, Mum thought I should probably go to the hospital because she could see my heart was beating way out of control and nobody could figure out what I had taken. So she clothed me and dragged me to the car. I got in and refused to keep my seatbelt on. So the next thing I can remember is being in hospital, ripping the IV out of my arm and ranting and raving how I should not be here and I just wanted a cigarette. And after that, my memory is gone completely. My parents say I was putting my hand up to my lips like I was smoking a joint or a cigarette, but there was nothing there. And my friend, N, came to see me, and he was actually there this time, and later told me I was saying that I couldn't pee because there was a little fairy waiting for me to take my eyes off of her so she could push me off the top of a building. And there was one little thing I remembered after that. The nurses were only letting one of my friends come in to see me at a time, and 2 of them were there, N and my other friend S. So N would come in and leave, and S would come in for a minute. But the thing I remember was seeing both of them and this girl, we'll call her V, walking in at the same time, which my mum told me was impossible due to the nurses only allowing one at a time. So this was quite weird. But after 3 days in the hospital tripping out, I finally got sober and I just wanted to go home. We were waiting for the nurse to come back in and tell me that that was going to happen. I was thinking it was a Saturday and I wanted to go and skate, but my mum actually told me it was Wednesday. So after a while the nurse came in and she said they had found marijuana and speed in my body, so they thought I was depressed. She told me I was going to be sent to rehab centre a few miles away for a little while. Boy, I got pissed. I sat up and I was like, no, I'm not depressed and I'm not going to a rehab centre. You can suck my F you, blah blah blah. And she told me I better calm down or she was going to get security. This just pissed me off even more, and I started yelling things like, F you bitch, you can send the effing pigs, they won't effing catch me, F you. and I jumped up and just ran for my life. Every door I got to was locked for some stupid reason, so I kept turning around and going the other way. And as I turned away from another locked door, I saw a cop walking quickly in my direction. I tried to run around, but he grabbed me. I started screaming and yelling and telling him I wanted a lawyer, and he was just like, "Oh, you'll get one, son." He called for backup since he could barely keep me in his arms. And 2 more pigs came, and they grabbed my feet and arms and carried me out of the hospital into the back of a cop car. So to shorten this up, I ended up going to rehab for around 3 days, then lying my way out saying I would never do drugs again. And the day I got out, I went to skate, and my friend S showed up with N offering me a bowl. Honestly, fuck not doing drugs, way too boring, but I never touched Datura ever again. So that's my story.